So, oh, there's a cat. So the other day I had an interview at a university for a film course. Now I'm not really sure whether I want to go to uni at the moment. I'm kind of shit scared at the idea of leaving my house and actually going outside at the moment, But anyway, I did the interview. I was very nervous, and part of the interview was you had to pitch a movie idea. So obviously I went with the same idea as my animated film, and so as a result the idea's progressed a lot because I've been thinking about it. And so today I thought I would just give a little update, just share with you what I've got so far. So here you go. I'm gonna read out from a script. I'll read out what the idea is, and then maybe I'll do some really awful drawings on MS Paint or something to go along with it. So without further ado, here's the idea. So it's an animated film set in a fantasy-style world. It starts in a small village at the base of a giant mountain. And when I say giant mountain, I'm talking huge. It's bigger than Mount Everest. Bigger than a mountain in real life, basically. We're shown a group of children playing around during an annual festival that happens once every 5 years. This festival involves volunteer adventurers racing against each other to get to the top of the mountain, which takes sort of several months minimum because it's so big. And whoever reaches the top is granted wealth beyond their wildest dreams. One of the children shown to aspire to one day complete the challenge himself. So this is going to be the main character. He's very clearly close with these, 2 or 3 other friends that he's got. Maybe he's got feelings for one of them. So we then get a fast forward into the future to see him working selling food to competitors at the base of the mountain. It becomes clear he's grown distant from the friends he once loved. Maybe he's got some pictures of them around the house that get shown. There's some sort of memento, maybe that the one that he really cares about is given him, and he's still got it, but it's gathering dust. So he's serving food to people. He sort of goes unnoticed by most people, and it's clear that he feels he doesn't have any value and he can't bring happiness or anything to those around him, and as a result he's pretty unhappy and he's feeling a bit worthless. So in sort of a rash decision, he decides he's gonna enter this race and that he's gonna climb the mountain, and if he wins, he'll use the money and the wealth to become close with the ones that he once held dear. So essentially, in his mind, the only way that he's gonna have any effect on the people that he cares about is through fame or monetary influence. That was a lot of big words. So he goes to sign up. However, when he attempts to sign up, he's made fun of by other professional competitors. So he's sort of made fun of because he's clearly not very suited to adventure. Maybe he's a bit chubby. Anyway, so he's kind of bullied out of it, and he gives up on the idea, and he's sort of resigned to the idea that he's a bit helpless and there's no real way that he can make that connection back with the people that he cares about. And then I'm not sure how deep to go, but I think he's probably gonna come to the decision that he's gonna end his life. So he's gonna slip some sort of poison into his drink, and he's gonna set it aside for later, and then he's gonna serve food to the competitors all day, make as much money as possible, put it in an envelope, and then send it to this woman that he cares about. However, just as he's writing this letter, he hears this big crash behind him, and he goes out the front and he finds this small little duck character is eating all of his food and has knocked all of the pans off the counter, and he just flips and he becomes really angry and he starts chasing this duck. And then there's this chase scene of a man chasing a duck. They eventually meet crowds of people who are supporting this event, and he's ducking and weaving through the crowds trying to get this duck, and it eventually leads him to the starting line of the race, and he's accidentally counted as one of the contestants, and he's entered in the race accidentally. So his journey begins. The first part of his journey involves a long flight of steep stairs that snake up these rolling hills, we'll say. So through this stage it becomes immediately clear that he's unfit to take on this challenge, and he becomes increasingly annoyed by this duck that's following him. The duck's still following him. So I suppose this is kind of an opportunity for a little bit of bonding between the guy and the duck, Maybe he'll still harbour a bit of hatred for the duck because it's entered him in this race that he doesn't want to be in anymore. But they're going to stick together, they're going to become companions, So as they're getting further up in these hills, it becomes more like a alpine area, maybe like trees with red leaves and and rocks and stuff like that. And in this section he meets this artist character. Now this artist is also frustrated and he's looking for someone to sort of inspire his work, and he sees the main character and he thinks, perfect, I now have someone to study. And so they sort of make an agreement that the artist will travel along with them and study the guy if the artist kind of helps him out with his travels. As they're climbing and as they're having breaks, it becomes clear that the artist is painting the same pictures in each location over and over and over again. And so there's a bit of mystery behind that. Anyway, they continue climbing and they eventually reach a forest of thick bamboo, and they come across this large panda who's said to be king of the forest. Panda treats them as his guest, but that night the other group of challengers that have sort of pacted together set fire to the bamboo forest because it's too dense and it'll quicken their passage if they just burn it all down and then go through it. Obviously this is very upsetting to the king of the forest himself, so he's very desperate and he asks the man in the duck and the artist obviously to find the spirit of the forest, which I guess they'll go on a little bit of a journey and they'll come to this clearing and there'll be this like a floating seed with like an aura coming out of it, and they'll plant this seed and this huge earth stone golem will rise from the ground and begin to regenerate the area around them, and the forest will come back to life. So the panda will be very happy with them, and in return they'll get a lift from the golem essentially, and that will get them ahead of the competitors again. And then as they're traveling further, they'll just be talking, you know, there'll be a bit of backstory. It'll prompt a flashback sequence which kind of explains how the old man drifted away from the people he loved, how he became so paranoid about what they would think of him if he suddenly reintroduced himself into their lives. So kind of a sad story about how he was kind of suffering in silence, if you like. Eventually they come to a cloud forest where they find a weatherman character standing next to a deflated weather balloon. He explains that he was knocked off course by a large flying shadow and his ballast for his hot air balloon has disappeared. As a result, he's slightly injured, but he has this glider, this basically what a lifeboat is to a cruise ship is what this glider is to a weather balloon. So we asked the man in the duck to go out in this glider to see if they can find his ballast while he's repairing his weather balloon. And as they're flying around, suddenly out of the clouds comes this huge flying whale, a sky whale, and on the whale's back maybe there's like a family of birds, and they've started to use the ballast as bedding for a nest. And so there's going to be like a whole scene where they're like soaring alongside the whale trying to grab these bags of ballast from inside of a glider plane. Anyway, they'll achieve it somehow, and then as a return of favour, the weatherman's going to give them a lift in his hot air balloon to the next village. So again, it's like they're helping a character that they've met along the way, and as a result they get a bit of an advantage. So when they reach this next town, they again meet these other competitors, and they're again, you know, teased and ridiculed by them. This town is in like a snowy area, and it's situated next to this large frozen lake. The townsfolk seem unreasonably scared to cross the lake at this time and are starving due to a lack of luck fishing. However, as they find out from the other competitors, the only way to reach the top is to go across the frozen lake because the path's on the other side. So they're able to rent ice skis and travel out onto the ice, but halfway across, the water below them starts to turn this bright pink colour, and they're confused to see millions of small shrimps swimming towards them under the ice. And then they find out that the reason behind this is this giant catfish that bursts through the ice. So there's this like fight scene with this giant catfish. You know, you can imagine they're like on like dog sleds on the ice, and there's just this like looming monster thing crashing through the ice behind them, and they're like having to dodge over, I don't know. Anyway, they sort of come out half victorious from this. They reach the land before the catfish can get them, and it slides back into the water, and all of these shrimp are flung out of the water, sort of flopping about on the land. And as a result, you know, the town is no longer starving because there's now lots of shellfish to eat. And so as thanks for helping the town feed themselves, the mayor informs them of a different way to the top, like a shortcut. And they also send them with this guide, which is a very large Yeti-like man, is what I've put here. And they're also given an artifact that was kept in the town for centuries, which is a key. Spoiler alert, it's the key to the door of the temple at the top of the mountain. So once at the top, it looks like everything's going to be great. It looks like the main guy's going to win. But then all of a sudden they're ambushed by these other greedy competitors that they've been sort of arguing with all the way up. And there's a bit of a struggle, and in the chaos, the artist ends up hanging over the edge of a cliff, and he actually falls off the cliff, and we don't hear of him again. So they actually lose out at the end, and the antagonist ends up going into this temple, and the main group of people end up disappointedly heading back down because they're so disheartened by the fact that they've lost, and they still have to make the return journey. So this is where the idea becomes less concrete, because I'm not sure really how to end it. For the moment, my idea is that the antagonist opens the door to the temple, and essentially there's nothing there, and he walks over to this like balcony at the back of this great hall, and the balcony just looks out upon the world. I was thinking that because the antagonist's main motivation initially is wealth and power, either he's kind of satisfied by this situation of just being able to look out upon the world, that gives him like a sense of feeling like he's in power when really he's got nothing. Or maybe the antagonist does actually find it difficult to steal the key from the rest of the party, because although he's still like inherently not a great guy, he's still been on this like really long journey, and that has actually changed him at least a little bit. And so when he gets to the top and finds there's nothing there, that would give more room for him to be less angry about that and not take it so badly. I don't really know, I'm not quite sure what to do there. Anyway, as for the main character, my idea is that as the party are heading down the hill, he's taken the artist's stuff with him, but he's not yet cared to look inside. However, when he does, he finds this really thick book, this really thick wad of paintings, and so that's when the mystery behind all of these similar looking paintings is revealed, because this book is actually essentially a flip book. So I'll give a bit more of an explanation here. It's a little bit of a deep idea, because I thought if I came up with like a theme behind the entire movie that was sort of semi-meaningful, I would have a better chance of impressing them in the interview. But also, like, when I've watched these Studio Ghibli movies, they always do have kind of a deeper meaning behind them, as well as all of the mystical adventure that goes on. There's like an actual message behind them, and I didn't really feel like mine had a message yet. So I was sort of thinking about what I wanted to portray, and considering the character feels like he has no value, I was sort of trying to come up with a way that I could show the character his effect on other people in like a physical form. It's sort of similar to the whole butterfly effect idea, where the little things that you've said to people that you thought were meaningless have actually had a greater effect on them. So at first I thought, the main character's then going to have to die, and he's going to be shown the effect of his life from beyond the grave, and that'll show him that he has had value on people even though he doesn't believe it himself. But then I didn't really want to kill the main character, because I don't know, where do you really go from there? That kind of kills the entire story, doesn't it? So instead I sort of came up with the idea of the artist character, and because he's been studying the main character throughout his journey, he's obviously documented all of the situations where the main character has helped other people along the way. So as the main character's flipping through this book, it'll illustrate to him all of the times throughout the journey that they've just made that he's had a positive effect on the people around him, and that will allow him to see his value, or at least allow him to see that he's able to affect other people positively, rather than what he was thinking before, where he was thinking he was a bit of a burden on people. So anyway, then maybe it sort of cuts ahead a little bit in time, and the main character and the weatherman have sort of banded together, and then as the credits are rolling, we're going to see that they've set up like a moving cafe essentially. So he's gone back to working in the same restaurant, but it's now a portable restaurant in a floating air balloon that travels the world. And then the post-credit scene, he'll float down in his air balloon in front of like this family home, and he'll reintroduce himself to the one that he loved before. And she's now got like a husband and children, and maybe even grandchildren. She's got a family, but that's not really what's important. What's important is that he's taken the step to reconnect himself with her, and he understands that there's never going to be the same relationship they had before, but it's just kind of a wholesome catch-up moment. So there you go, that's the idea. It's still not incredible, but I think it's better than before. Obviously, it's still very unlikely that it's ever gonna turn into anything, but it's kind of what I initially wanted to come up with. I hope it doesn't come across like I'm trying to be too deep or edgy, because I mean the film's still going to be like light-hearted and you know, at heart it's still going to be like a fun adventure. Please leave some comments down below of what you think of this idea. You could write something like, this was dumb and stupid and also very dumb, and then I'll probably heart it and then pin it as the top comment. Yep. Thank you all for watching. I've been Jude and you've been watching Disney Channel.